Today we're with Steve White. We can't say that you're at Brooklyn Boatyard anymore, but you kind of are.
I kind of am still, yeah. I'm still a part owner.
Right.
They haven't paid me all off yet.
So to keep you around, they'll just not pay you, right?
No, I think they'll pay me to get rid of me.
No, I don't think so. Let's start right from the beginning. I've read some of your grandfather's books. Is this how you got into boating? Well, what we also probably should say is who your grandfather is. It's E.B. White.
Yeah.
Because some people just might not know that.
That's probably a lot of people don't know that.
Well, I bet more people than we think.
Yeah.
But
my grandfather was into boating, and always had been. He had boats with Frankie Day at the Benjamin River Yard before my father had Brooklyn Boatyard. So he was always into both sailboats, actually mostly sailboats rather than powerboats. But later on in his life, when I got to know him better, he had the sloop Martha, which my father built for him. It was a little 24-foot Crocker design sloop, really pretty little boat that is still in Brooklyn, Rich Hilsinger owns now. He was using that, but he was kind of moving towards canoes and pond trips. He enjoyed being out in his canoe a lot, and paddling. And I remember he used to take me out, turtle hunting when I was a kid in his canoe in Blue Hill and stuff, and that was really fun.
Now, did he live down where the yard is?
No, he lived about 4 miles away from the boatyard.
So where did it go from there? Where did you actually get your background in boat?
Really, it was from my father. As a kid, at about 3 or 4 years old, I remember driving with my mother to bring my father his lunch at the boatyard. She'd pack a lunch for him, and then we would drive in the summertime and go and drop off his lunch. And I would just walk around the yard and see what's going on. At that time, my father was still partners with Arno Day.
So, when did you start working at the yard?
I think my first job there would have been probably in 1966 or something like that, just as a summer job, working around the yard, bailing out dinghies, sweeping the floor, things like that.
Right.
I remember I got 25 cents an hour.
Yeah.
That's what I was being paid. And, thought that was, big stuff.
Probably was.
Probably was back then. I don't know.
Well, I was only 10 cents or so.
Yeah. And so that's really where I sort of got it. I was, at the yard, the working day, I would go there with my father in the morning, come back at the end of the day with him. And he would assign me all these different jobs, but a big part of it was bailing out the dinghies and learning how to row. And I really wanted to run our scow boat, our yard boat that we had that had a little outboard.
Right.
But he wouldn't let me drive it until I proved to him I could row very well. And I said, well, how good do I have to row? I can row. And he says, you need to be able to land the boat on the side of the dock here. He said, I'm going to hold an egg alongside the dock, and you're going to need to land the boat without breaking the egg.
Yep.
And eventually I passed that test. I only broke a couple eggs.
Today that would be
yeah, that's right. And so then I was allowed to use the yard boat, which we still have, the original yard boat that he built is still there, which is still one of my favorite boats.
Yeah. So your father was Joel. So what did you learn from your father? Because your father was a naval architect. Give us a little background on your father.
He was. My father went to Cornell University for 2 years, and then he decided to become a naval architect. And he thought, well, Cornell doesn't have a naval architecture school, but MIT does. So he got into MIT and transferred there and went to MIT and graduated there when I was about a year and a half old, I think. He really wanted to get into more designing, and he really wanted to learn how to build boats because he'd built a couple of little dinghies and stuff.
Where did he learn that?
He just did it by himself, basically from, books that he picked up in the Handyman Journal or something like that, and he'd build these little flat-bottom skiffs.
Popular Mechanics.
And Popular Mechanics, I'm sure, was one, and would launch them in the pond and go eel hunting and things like that with my grandfather. So he got a job working at the boatyard with Arno, and they were a pretty good combination because Arno was a really talented boat builder, and he basically taught my father how to build boats, what the real techniques were of all of this. And my father did a little bit of designing, but not too much because Arno was a designer as well. And they were building, some of Arno's designs. But I think my father's first paid naval architecture job was converting Cirrus, the Fisher's Island 31, Herreshoff, from a sloop into a yawl. And he did the redesign work on that. And she's still a yawl now, and we still have her at the boatyard. Yeah.
So where do you fit in? Because at the time, you worked at the yard a little bit.
I worked at the yard summer times, and then I was at prep school for 4 years. When I was 13 years old, I basically couldn't wait to get out of Brooklyn, Maine. I would look around and I said, Jesus, if this isn't the end of the earth, I can see it from here. And,
you can see Jones Porter.
Yeah, right. I got to get out of here. And fortunately, my parents didn't like the local school system all that much and decided that Martha and I should go to prep school. I ended up choosing Northfield Mount Hermon because I was really into basketball in the 8th grade, junior high and 8th grade. And on my tour of Northfield Mount Hermon, they took me to the gymnasium, and they had 3 basketball courts side by side with glass backboards, which were like the coolest thing in the world. I'd never seen a glass backboard before in my life. And I thought, oh my God, this is where I want to go. So I ended up, saying I'm going to go there. An ironic story was that winter of my 8th grade, before I went to prep school, my parents introduced me to skiing and took us up to Sugarloaf. And I fell in love with skiing. All I wanted to do was ski from then on. And so when I got to Mount Hermon, I said, I'm not going to play basketball this winter. I'm going to go skiing this winter. Part of being a student at Mount Hermon was everybody had a job that they had to do as part of sort of the community effort of keeping the school up. And the first year you get assigned which job you're going to do. You don't get any choices. And I was assigned to mop the basketball floors. So for the whole first year, 3 times a week, I would go and I would go up and down. I would mop all 3 basketball floors. But I never played basketball there. I just skied.
So you went to 3 different schools in college?
I went to Cornell University first. When I was at Mount Hermon and started applying to schools, they said, well, you've got to apply to Cornell because your grandfather went there and your father went there, and they'll give you preference. And I said, yeah, but I'm a C- student. They're never going to take me there. Well, apparently it had some weight. And then I started going to classes, and I remember going to my biology class, and I walked to the class, and I kind of looked around and said, what the heck is going on here? It was like I was going to a concert. I walked in, there were 1,300 students in the one class. And I sat down, and the instructor started off by saying, don't anybody raise your hand, don't anybody ask any questions, just listen to what we have to say, and then meet with your student teacher at the end of the week if you have any questions. And I thought, well, I'm not really used to this after 4 years of prep school with, sort of 6 kids in a classroom, or 10 maybe. So Cornell didn't really work for me very well. I did play lacrosse there, which was actually fun. But it was fall, and, it wasn't, there wasn't officially a team in the fall, but we did play lacrosse there. And I played lacrosse at Mount Hermon, which was a sport I was pretty good at. But it didn't go any further. So I dropped out of Cornell after 6 weeks. And came back and told my parents, I said, well, I'm not going to Cornell anymore. I'm going to drive my car to Aspen, Colorado, and see if I can get a job skiing this winter. I'll take a year off. And astoundingly, they were not particularly against it.
Right. So where'd you go to college after that?
While I was out there, I got offered a job as a ski instructor for the upcoming year, and I was able to get a job, building houses through the summertime. So I wrote my grandfather and my parents and said, I've got a job through the summer, and I'm going to be a ski instructor next year, so I'm just going to stay here and be a ski instructor next year. And my grandfather wrote me a letter back, and he said, Steve, he said, nice to hear from you. He said, I think you will be a wonderful ski instructor after you graduate college. And probably one of the very few smart things I ever did in my life was listen to him. And I thought, maybe I should be doing this. And I said, okay. So, but I hadn't been applying to any college or something, and this is April now, ski season's over. And I said, well, I guess I got to apply to college to see where I can get into. And Brown University had been sending me notices from the lacrosse coach saying, we're hoping you'll come to Brown, please apply. How fast are you running the 40 now? And I thought, well, I'm ski the 40 pretty fast, but I'm running it so fast. So I thought, all right, fine, I'll go to Brown University. So I applied to Brown, and I got rejected. Apparently I wasn't running fast enough or something. But so that's what I wrote my grandfather. I said, well, now what do we do? Because I'm going to school, I need some place to go. And I applied to Cornell, Ithaca, Colby, and URI, and I got into all of them. And my grandfather said, well, you got into Colby, right? And I said, yeah, in Waterville. And he said, well, President Schreider is a pretty good friend of mine. Let me give him a call. So I don't see why they can't take you this year instead of last year and stuff. So my grandfather made a call, and I got the word that I was going to Colby that year. So I went to Colby for 2 years, and then I took a year off, a year abroad to Switzerland to go skiing some more. And was actually with one of my best friends from prep school who I had been working for in Boston as a bartender on the booze cruise, and got a job working with him. Went to visit him in Switzerland. I thought, wow, this is fun. This is my idea of college. And so we went there, and he and I and one other roommate had our own chalet that the ski lift was right across the street, and that was my alarm clock in the morning. It would start up, and that would wake me up. And I could either get on the ski lift and ride up the hill to ski down to school, or else I could walk up the hill to get up to school. And, Switzerland is steep. And so I thought, if I could ride, so I probably didn't make enough ski trips down to the school. But anyway, I spent my junior year there. I went back to Colby my senior year. And at the very end of the year, my grades were still not all that great. In fact, they were a little worse than not all that great. I was on the verge of, of not being able to graduate. And I had to pass my chemistry exam. And I hated chemistry. I hated chemistry so much. And I didn't go to my chemistry classes. I think I only went to 2 or 3 of them. And the chemistry exam came, and it was a 2-hour exam, and we walked in. And Dr. McAmer looked at me. He goes, he knew me. He knew who I was, not from attending class, but he knew who I was. And he said, Steve, what are you doing here? You're not a student in this class. I said, oh, yes, I am. And he goes, okay, all right. Well, he said, here's your exam. And he handed out the exams, and then he began, and he said, He said, this is a 2-hour exam. When everybody finishes their exam, bring your exam down to the front of the room, and all graduating students put your exam in this pile. All other students put your exams in this pile, and we'll grade the graduating students first and stuff, because graduation's in a few days. And so I started the exam. 20 minutes later, I was done. I'd gone through it 3 times. I got my name right, I know. And I made some, not very educated guesses on a couple other things, and anything I had to write about, I just think I left it blank. And so I said, well, I'm not going to sit here for another hour and 40 minutes and just wait for the time to go by. So I walked down to the front with my exam paper. I was the first one to walk down, and I went to put it on the pile that said graduating seniors, and Dr. McNamara looked at me and he goes, Mr. White, are you sure that's the correct pile to put it on? And I said, Dr. McNamara, I am positive this is the correct pile to put it on. Well, I guess it wasn't positive. I got a call the next day from my student advisor, Dr. Coons, who said, Steve, we need to come talk to you about graduation, because I failed it miserably, and so I didn't have the grade point average to graduate. And I thought, I better call my father. One of the worst calls I ever had to make was to call my father and say, don't make a hotel reservation yet for graduation. There may be a fly in the ointment here. I went and visited with Dr. Coons, and he talked to me about how poorly I had done the chemistry exam and about other things. And he said, nevertheless, he said, you've been here for 4 years, except for your year abroad. And he said, we looked into your year abroad, and he said, we found that you took a class there that we previously had not given you credit for. But he said, we think we will give you credit for it now, so that will allow you to have enough credits to graduate. They just wanted me out of there, really. And I'm pretty sure my grandfather had been paying the full boat price for me to go there. So they just thought it was time for me to be done. So I was allowed to graduate and walk up, and my father came and did that. And it was good. So I graduated Colby. And I said, well, I'm not ready to go to Brooklyn yet. It's still out in the sticks, too far away. So I hatched an idea to go down to the Gulf of Mexico and try to get a job working in the oil industry somehow. And I got down there, and I ended up getting a job working on tugboats down there. I didn't make nearly as much money as I thought I was going to, but I was in the water, and I was doing some fun and exciting things, and it was pretty eye-opening. Being there. The oil industry and the marine side of the oil industry is just astounding at how big.
So what did you do?
And diverse. I was a deckhand on a tugboat, and it was a 85-foot tugboat. I think it was 5,000 horsepower or something like that.
Single screw?
No, twin screw. Yeah. And we did a lot of different stuff. We were moving barges around. We worked for a long time with a diving barge, where we would tow the barge out to a rig that had been drilled. We would set their anchors. They had 4 10,000-pound anchors, and we'd set the anchors for them, and then they had winches on all 4 corners. They would move the barge right up next to the oil rig, and then they would send divers over, and the divers were doing completion welding to complete the pipeline from the oil tank to the land. Basically, we were about 2 or 3 miles off the mouth of the Mississippi River. I did that from June until Mardi Gras. Because while I was there, a bunch of my college friends came down. I went down with a college friend that I had skied with a lot, and we all got jobs working on tugboats, and we all talked about how we hated it. We said, screw this, winter comes, we're going out to Aspen, we're going skiing again. And so that's what we all planned to do. And around Thanksgiving, I gave my notice to the tug company saying, I'm done after this week, and going skiing. Oh, you can't leave. You can't leave. We really need you. And I worked 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And they said, we really, really want you to stay. We need the work and stuff. And I said, if you double my pay and I don't have any time off from now until Mardi Gras, I said, I'll work until Mardi Gras. But I said, I'm going to Mardi Gras and then I'm going to Aspen, going skiing. And I said, okay, fine. So I worked straight for about a month and a half, and got off, drove my pickup truck. I had a 4-wheel drive pickup truck. Drove it up to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, and friends were coming down to visit us and party with us and stuff. And I drove around, and I couldn't find a place to park anywhere. And I drove, and finally I said, I'm just parking right over there. And I pulled over, and it was a big lawn in front of a fire department. And I just pulled up onto the lawn, and there was another truck right there that had these magnetic signs on the door that said New Orleans Bureau of Labor or something like that. It looked very official. So we swiped the two signs and stuck them on the side of my truck and parked it there on the firehouse lawn for the entire Mardi Gras. And while I was there, I met a gal who kind of took me in, and we partied there for the whole Mardi Gras. And then I got ready to drive out to Aspen. And I walked back, and sure enough, the truck was still there, tags were still on it. A roommate at the time who was there was with me, and we walked and we got into it, and we started it up, and we drove to Aspen. And no tickets.
Wayne Hamilton has worked on the water since he was 12. He and the people of Hamilton Marine share a hands-on passion for boats and boating. They know the products they sell and how best to use them, and eagerly share their experience and know-how with Hamilton customers. If you're way into boats or just beginning to wade in, come to the boater store that knows boating, Hamilton Marine.
And I spent another winter skiing in Aspen. And at that point, I said, Brooklyn doesn't look that bad. So I've been gone about 12 years, basically, from Brooklyn. I would come back on summer times and things like that. But mostly I was gone for all, 4 years of prep school and college, and then the 2 years that I took off in between. So at that point, Brooklyn didn't look too bad. Maybe I'll try that. So I moved back to Brooklyn, and my father said, "Yep, you can start working at the yard." And the timing was good for him because he still wasn't doing very much design work at the boatyard because he was just too busy running a boatyard. He had 5 full-time employees, including himself, and 2 part-time employees. And I came there and started working, and that's really when I started learning about boat building and stuff. That was 1978.
Okay.
Yep, that was the spring of 1978. And funnily enough, I'm going back to Aspen in about 2 weeks with 4 of the guys that were my roommates in Aspen. We're going to go skiing there. One of them was with me and my roommate in both Switzerland, at Colby, and in Louisiana, and in Aspen. And we're all going back to go skiing, and it'll be the first time I've been there since 1978. So
wow.
47 years.
Wow.
Almost 5 decades. I can't
believe it.
I don't know how did 5 decades go by?
So did you stay at the yard at that time from 1978 on?
Yes, I've been at the yard full time ever since then. Yeah.
Because I think the first time I remember you there was when you built Vortex.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Up to that point, your father finished off a lot of Stanleys,
yep,
a lot of lobster boats, but he was also getting into that classic boat design.
Yeah, I mean, he'd always been into the classic boat design, and that's really what he wanted to do, was design boats like that and build boats like that. But the wooden boat building industry, of course, in the 70s and 80s and stuff was pretty much over. It was really kind of tanking, and that's why we were finishing off a lot of fiberglass hulls. And I remember my father actually coming and approaching all of us at the boatyard and saying, you know, this seems to be what we're doing. Should we just design our own boat and start building them out of fiberglass? Or should we just try to keep doing what we're doing and hope to get some wooden boats to build and stuff? And we had a few, you know, every other year it seemed like we had a wooden boat to build. And the crew sort of voted, and they said, "No, we really don't want to start building fiberglass boats. We'll finish them off, but we don't want to lay them up and all of that." So that's where it went. And by 1990, I'd been at the yard long enough that I had some authority as I was kind of the foreman or general manager or something like that. And I thought, well, you know, if we're going to stay building boats, we need to do something to show that it's a worthwhile endeavor for people to do. And the Goujon brothers had brought out their book on boat building using the West system, and I had gotten pretty excited about that. I built some smaller boats using that method. I really liked it. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to build my own boat. And I chose that Nudreimer's Swede 55 square meter. I picked it because I thought at about 16,000 pounds, it's a boat that I can afford to build. And boats kind of cost by the pound. And I thought, that's what I can afford to build. And it's about the same size as a Concordia yawl, weight-wise. It's actually a little bit lighter. But it's a lot faster, and it's got, you know, even more room inside of it, even though it's only 10 feet wide. And so I think I'll build that. And so I contacted Nudreimer's, and he sold me the rights to build the boat. He said, but all I have is drawings for fiberglass. And he said, I have lines, but he said, I don't have any construction drawings for wood. And I said, well, between my father and I think we can work that part out. And he was fine with that. So he sold me the plans. I think it was about $1,100 to buy the plans. Wow. Yeah. And I had a great conversation with her, male relationship with him. I would write letters back and forth because, of course, it was pre-internet and too expensive to call on telephone. So we wrote several letters back and forth, which I still have, about, you know, how I was doing it. I built it over 2 years. I built the hull 1 year. And then
I remember this. So what year? This is late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, I launched the boat in August 1990, and so I started building it in the summer of 88, I think. And I built the hull and some of the other parts and pieces of the rudder and things like that in the summer. And then we put it away. Or actually, no, I started late summer, got through kind of work, and then I was building it during the winter, and then spring would come and I would put it away again for a while and then work on it when I could. And then the next year repeated that, only had the deck and everything, and got it launched in August of 1990.
Now, when did you start racing it? Because that really put you on the map.
August 1990.
Yeah. Was the first race the Eggemoggin Reach Regatta?
No, that was well, no, actually it was. You're right, because the first Eggemoggin was 1985. This is the 40th year of the Eggemoggin Reach Regatta. And so, yes, the first one was the Eggemoggin Reach Regatta. And I don't even remember how I did. I'd have to look, but people took notice of the boat. It finished, you know, well up in the standings. I'm not sure.
Well, didn't they create a class because of you?
Well, yeah, we started into that part of it. I think at that point we didn't have a spirit or tradition class for the Eggemoggin Reach Regatta, but right after that, I sailed down to Newport, Rhode Island, and
Yacht Regatta.
Elizabeth Meyer was putting on the Classic Yacht Regatta, and I wrote them a letter, and I said, I'd love to enter this boat. It's a brand new wooden boat, but I know it doesn't really sort of fit the classic design. It's got a fin keel and a spade rudder. And I said, but I'd like to come along and participate and just sort of show off the boat. But I said, I don't need to be entered in the racing category because I understand that I wouldn't fit. And Elizabeth says, oh, no, you're going to race. Absolutely, we're going to have you racing and stuff. Because I actually knew Elizabeth from...
You went to school with her in summer school.
I went to camp with her in Bucksport at Alamoosic Island Camp.
Yeah.
And that's where I first met her, and I think I was 13 then. And Queenie Hooper was at that camp, and Peter Chase was at that camp, who ended up working as one of my top carpenters.
For years?
For years and years, yeah. And Peter Fletcher, who was also a carpenter for us, he was working at the camp also. So it's interesting how all these connections roll around. And that really kind of kicked things off. I got a lot of inquiries and a lot of interest about, the boat and everything, and I continued to race it in other events in the next few years. And we have built a new wooden boat every single year since 1990.
But who else at the time was doing that? Because Hodgson did a little bit.
Yep.
He was doing Urel.
Yep.
But was there anybody else that really played with cold molding?
Walter Green.
Well,
which is kind of a whole different side of cold molded boat building, the trimaran thing. But he's one of my heroes, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Walter. He was the first guy that taught me how to vacuum bag.
Really?
I literally just drove down to his shop one day and just walked in unannounced and said, I'm Steve White, and I'm into this cold molded boat building, and I need to learn how to vacuum bag. And he took about 3 hours off of his day and just set up a little vacuum bag, showed me how to do it.
He was a really
he was an astounding guy. Yeah.
What's some of the favorite boats that you've built over the years?
Wow. Yeah. We've built some amazing boats. We've been really fortunate to build some amazing boats. Probably still my favorite is Wild Horses, because my father was still alive at the time, although he didn't live to see her launched, but he did live to see the hull built, turned right side up, and I was pretty proud of that. And I did a lot of sailing and racing on that boat in lots of different places in the world, including Europe and Caribbean and all over the U.S. So I have a lot of great memories associated with that. Aurora is another boat that's kind of big on my list. It was a 55-foot Bill Tripp IMS design, straight out racing boat. But the owner said he wanted to build it in wood. Bill Tripp did not want to build it in wood, but it wasn't Bill's choice to make, so that's what we did. And I raced that boat across the Atlantic, as well as Bermuda races and a lot of other races, Key West Week and things like that. I learned a lot about sailing and racing on that boat. Skip Sheldon was a pretty amazing owner for that boat and campaigner. So that's a great one. Dragonera I love because it was built shortly after Vortex. It was my father's biggest design at the time, and so it was the biggest boat we had built at the time. And that boat is still owned by the same owner and still here in Maine, which is terrific. Foggy was an amazing boat, a 55-foot Freres design, very modern boat, but again, wooden construction, bright finished hull. The owner who paid for the boat was a very difficult guy to work with, but Frank Gehry was the actual owner of record, and working with him through the design process and stuff was really quite fascinating to see his approach. And then, of course, Herman Freres, who was the actual designer of the boat. I went down to Argentina and visited him down there, and he came up to Brooklyn a couple of times and met with him, and one of the most amazing gentlemen I've ever met. Great designer, great sailor, and just generally wonderful man.
Who was the owner that came out of Camden that was always over at your shop having another boat built every once in a while?
Came out of Camden.
Ginger.
Oh yeah, Richard Chaté.
Yeah.
Yes, Richard Chaté. Yeah, all of his boats were big. I mean, we built four boats for Richard. So that was really fun.
Yeah, Ginger was a neat boat.
Ginger was a really neat boat, and she's in Camden now.
Is she?
Yeah. She's bought by an owner who lives in Camden and is sailing it and racing it again now. So that boat, the 76-footer that we built for him, that looked a lot like Wild Horses, but was Bob Stevens' version of it, and then a little faster than Wild Horses. Mm-hmm. Isabel was the other big boat that we built for him.
Yeah.
And
Then you had the guy Sonny that built the three.
We had Albert D. Phelps. We built 3 boats for him, 2 identical boats, a 70-footer that we built for him. He had it for a few years, sailed it a lot, and said, "I need to get rid of the boat. I'm too old. Can you help me donate the boat?" Which I did. He donated it, and he called me up about a month later and said, "Steve, I've made a terrible mistake. I need my boat back." And I said, "Well, I don't think you can get it back now, Bert." I said, "The government has already issued the check, your refund." So we built him an identical boat, exactly the same boat as he had before, and even wanted to make sure that we built that the cabinets were exactly the same size, so his coffee maker could fit in just the way it did before, because it was exactly right. Mm-hmm. So we built that boat for him, and then he got the idea to build another bigger boat. And
she was 94, wasn't she?
She was 93 feet. Yeah. So Sunny 3, we called it. It was only Sunny, but we called it Sunny 3, so we could remember which was which. That's the biggest boat we built to date.
Well, I always heard that he said, "I didn't need a boat, I needed a project."
That's right. He loved sailing, and he sailed until he was 98 years old, when he passed away. He had sailed, I think, about a week or 2 before he did pass away. But he said, "Yes, I don't need a boat, but I need a project." Mm-hmm. And he would call me up every single morning at 8 o'clock on the butt. 7 days a week, vacations, holidays, anytime, "What'd you do yesterday?" I called it Breakfast with Bert. And, every single day for 18 months. Mm-hmm. I'd have a conversation with him about where the boat was, how we were coming along with it. But
how about employees?
Those are some of that.
You've got some really good employees, and you retain them.
Yeah. I
mean, Brian's been there as long as I can remember, so that's over 40 years.
Yeah. The one thing I did learn early on was that the better the people that are working for you, the better you look. Mm-hmm. Surround yourself with smart people, and you'll look smart. And so that's what I did. I was never the best boat builder of many of the boat builders that have worked for me. Mm-hmm. I was never the best, painter or rigger or sailor or anything like that.
You knew how it all was done.
But I knew I was all done, and I knew it was important to have, people that were strong in each of those different categories. So I tried hard to keep all of the different aspects of the yard strong and viable. I think that's one of the important things of running a yard, is that you need carpenters, you need riggers, you need painters, you need electricians and mechanics, all of those things. And with the ebb and flow of people that you have over 47 years, some get stronger than others and stuff, but the goal is always to try to keep them all equally strong.
Mm-hmm. To be so that you wanted to bow out?
Well, I never had any children, and so I thought, 20 years ago, what am I going to do with this business when I'm ready to retire? And I didn't just want to sell it to a bigger company. Mm-hmm. And I had offers by other individuals, and I talked to some people about doing it, but we never found, the right person that either wanted to continue with the offer or that I thought would be good at running the yard. And then, I don't know how, but somehow or other I heard about the concept of an ESOP. And so I started looking into that, and I loved the idea of the employees running it because I had such a great group of employees. And
now, one thing I've noticed is that I think they're doing more power boats because they brought in Wheeler.
Yeah, we're doing more power boats, but
You like that anyways.
Well, I like both. I like power boats and sailboats. I mean, I really wish that we could be building some sport fishing boats. I'd love to build a sport fishing boat, but we'd need the right owner and the right captain to help guide us through the real intricacies of it. But I think we could do a great job with that. But I've never built a catamaran or a trimaran. I always thought that might be fun.
It'd be fun.
Yeah. And I think the fact that we're building more power boats now is not so much a direction that we were focusing on or even pushing as it is. I think more people are just buying more power boats. I mean, I think 9 out of 10 boats sold in the world are power boats.
Right.
And so we've finally gotten out of, just sailboats or almost just sailboats. Yeah.
Because you may have another 55 to do at some point.
Yeah, we hope we've got another 55 to do. He's still trying to sell that project, but we're just starting on a new 47-foot powerboat that Will has designed.
Will Sturdy.
Yeah. Will Sturdy is our chief designer now.
Yeah,
and great looking boat and single screw hard chine boat. I think has a lot of down east influences, but a more modern boat. A project I hope that comes to fruition is this PT3 boat.
Yes,
the Patrol Torpedo number 3, which was designed by George Crouch and built in Detroit in 1941, I think.
Yep.
And it's in New Jersey, and we've got a customer that's interested in restoring the boat, but we're trying to get him, all lined up and ready to do it. And it's hard to keep his attention because he owns 2 big shipyards, one in Quebec and one in Finland.
Oh.
And he builds steel Arctic and Antarctic exploring ships.
Oh.
And he just bought the yard in Finland and is trying to redirect that. He ended up, they are the number 1 Arctic and Antarctic ice exploring vessels, builders in the world. And he was able to purchase the yard because it had been taken over by the Russians and was being run by the Russians. But when the Ukraine war came out, the sanctions against the Russians essentially shut the yard down in Finland, and so it was available, and he bought it, and he's trying to really pull all that together. And he's got a lot in front of him, and the fact that he's even interested in a PT boat is kind of astounding. But it would be really a fun project. And he's got a pair of Packard V12s to put in, which were the original engines. So it would be really fun.